Righto, so getting a bit done on the van today. So I've just got back from MotorX, so you can see the van still where it was before I went to the van nats at Easter, because it's just been busy. So my mate Phil Kurgene from Kurgene Motorsport, or on Facebook, or Fuelworks on Facebook as well. Geez, that was long-winded, wasn't it? So Phil's done every car that I've built since I've been in Wollongong, so nearly 20 years. And he basically, and it carries fluid, Phil sorts that out for me. So he's making a set of factory lines, or factory styled lines, but in stainless steel. And I'm just going to show you how we go about that. So I've got all this set up. So this is factory Borg Warner disc brake. These aren't the brakes. I had fortunate enough to have a spare set. So the new brake lines, and now he's working out how to get from here around, across, and up to the factory line. And it's interesting on, so this is XC, but A, B, C all very similar. If you've got a Borg Warner with a single exhaust, the brake line comes over to this point, which is the breather, and there's a block there, but then it's in the way for a twin system. You can buy this fitting, which is for a V8 twin system Borg Warner. Now if you've got a 9-inch, it's different again. It's got one that fits on here and goes over. So this is specific to being Borg Warner diff, twin exhaust from the factory. So Phil's going to now make these lines up. I've dragged out some photos of when we did Cobra 400 and also Venom, because they're different. One's Borg Warner, the other one is 9-inch, but the Borg Warner didn't have the tramp rods that I've now fitted. But Venom did. So we're just trying to work out to make them look factory. And I've taken the sway bar off because I'm going to put the factory brackets underneath, so there won't be any U-bolts in his way. So now he's got to come around and go across. So we'll show you how some of that happens and some of the tools he uses to be able to make a set of brake lines. Righto, so we're back on the job today. So Phil had to pick up some more lines. So this is the stainless line that he's using, and it comes in a roll, as you can see. So part of the issue is we want nice straight stainless steel lines. So this little gadget he's got set up here is a straightener. So he's just going to feed a bit through it, and by the look of it, that'll take all different sizes, pipes.
Yeah, it's fully adjustable.
So like everything, it probably looks really easy, but I'm sure there was a bit of learning to do, and you can see him just tightening the pressure up there to make that nice and straight. Just like that, and you end up with a nice straight piece of pipe.
Something you can work with anyway.
So Phil, if you mess a bend up, can you get rid of it with that, or is it once you've stuffed it, you stuffed it?
If it's a curve, it's okay. If it's a tight
bend,
it's usually
bad luck. Have another go.
You can play with it, but yeah.
All right, we might throw a bit through that in a minute. I'm sure we'll have a piece that don't quite go right, because it's a bit like rocket science, I guess, brake lines, because so what I see, a lot of it is actually getting the angles right, but also, you know, you need a certain percentage of bend, but it's got to be bending in the right direction, doesn't it?
Yeah, a lot of it's measurements too. You know, like I've done a couple of times where you end up being 100 mil short. And
you measure it out, cut the bit of tube, and then when you get to the last bend, you've run out.
That's right.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll keep working away. So you need to have a fair bit of OCD if you're going to do this sort of work, because getting everything to end up back looking straight and fitting in the clips, and whilst we're not trying to look factory, we're trying to make it look a little bit like maybe Ford might have done it that way. So on again, off again, on again, off again. You love them easy ones, don't you, Phil?
This one's not too bad. This one's just getting rid of the brackets and diff.
There's no easy ones. So once you get the line made, then you've got to put the end on it. So we've all done it. We've made the line without the fitting on there, and we've made the line
Even I've done that.
with the fitting on back to front, because it tends to happen on the odd occasion. So what Phil's got here is a hydraulic unit. And like myself, he's had a couple of different versions.
Yeah, this is the best one I've had, especially when you're doing stainless. Stainless stuff's really difficult to work with, so it's harder to flare, obviously. But yeah, this has been the best one I've ever used. Most consistent anyway, to do double flares.
So double flare, so the first little fitting bends it one way, and then this one will bend it back the other. And as you can see with the pump there, it's a nice looking bit of equipment, that one.
Yeah, so he does the first flare. I'm not sure if you can see it with the video, but it does a pretty tight little bubble flare.
Yep.
And then you put the second one in.
And as he said to me the other day, with Ford, sometimes that's all it needs.
Yeah, a lot of the Fords only have the single flare. A lot of late model cars. Not that we do too many late model cars these days, but I'll do that. That'll give you a nice flare.
Beautiful. So some of the other options is this sort of tool. So this is mine that I inherited from my dad a long time ago. So it's probably 40 years old, but I think it's German, and it was probably the duck's guts back then.
Yeah, they still sell them now.
There you go, so Rothenberg. It works, but you've got to be really finicky about when you cut it and when you set it up. But if you get yourself a decent cutter,
Yep.
makes a big difference. And then this comes with a little cleaner as well for making sure that when you cut it, you don't get little dags and stuff on it. Because when you go to make that flare, you need to have that cut end really good. And then the thing about stainless, it's probably twice as hard as using mild steel.
Yeah.
It's what we all like to do, but if you're doing resto, makes the whole job a lot easier. If you've been able to source the mild steel in the zinc, or is it all pretty much all painted now?
Oh, it depends where you get it from. Most of it's just a silver cad plating or zinc plating. Yeah,
Yep, cool.
Pretty standard. Yeah,
Because I know we had trouble with one of the cars just trying to get
the right colour.
something that looked like original.
I think it was the Cobra. One of the Cobras we couldn't get the right colour.
All right, well, we'll see how that looks now when he gets it on there.
I'm just going to come across like that and then just bend it in, I think.
So now that he's got the fitting on there, you can't do these little tight bends. If you do a little tight bend, you then you don't have enough pipe to do the flare, the flare. So it's working out which thing to do first. And that's where the experience comes into it. Right, so Phil's gone now. What I've been doing now is trying to get all the different bits and pieces that gets this finished. So you can see what he's done with the lines. Now I've put the sway bar back on because I just need to make sure everything's going to fit. And I'll make brackets that go on here the same as original, so they won't actually have a U-bolt. They'll just get tacked onto the housing. From the factory, they just had like a little, I don't know, 10 mil weld each side. So I'll make those up, and that way I can then clip it back onto the bracket here, and then we'll make a new bracket for this side. And it didn't have a bracket over here because, as I mentioned earlier, it had a different setup on it. So I've found the pipe here, so this will have a breather that'll go up and into that hole as per factory. That sort of gets all that brake line part of it done. So he's been able to make, he's got everything taped on at the moment. So this line here, got the stainless line now running from there, and it runs all the way up to the front. And it has a bit of a zigzag up the front here because it's got to get around the gearbox and the handbrake cable. And he's put a stainless steel factory style joiner here. where the original one was joined, and then on this side it runs up and around, which might put it down to have a look at that. So I'll reuse original style clips, and I'll talk about those in a minute actually, because they're a bit of a nuisance trying to put them on. But these holes here are the factory hole for the clip, and the clip goes out and holds the brake lines on. So I'll reuse the original style. The reason I've got the handbrake back on now is I just want to make sure I've got everything, and I've pretty much made up my mind I'm going to use the original cable, because the actual plastic coating and all on the cable is very good. This car hasn't done a lot of kilometres. I reckon I'll wire wheel these up and paint them, and then all of these fittings will clean up nice. So I'm looking to use that because I see so much information about a lot of the reproduction stuff that's not as good as original, and I've got a good original cable here, so I'm going to use that cable, and then I'll get these re-zinced, the brackets and stuff. But at the moment I'm just trying to get it all on to make sure I work out where it goes, all my brackets, all my nuts and bolts and all, and that sort of tries to finalise what's happening with the braking side of the car. So up the front we've got factory style again, so he's come out through here. There's a rubber grommet goes on there, and once we clip everything that'll sit in position in the middle of that grommet, and it comes around. And one of the previous episodes I showed where I cut the original bracket off of the line, because this has got an upgraded front brake, so this is like a hoppers stoppers kit, and it's running the twin spot PBR off of an AU3 Falcon, and then a re-drilled Commodore rotor to get the right offset. So that's all good now. The lines run per factory then up to the master cylinder, and then all I've got to do now is make, I think, a little bracket here just to hold this line in position so it doesn't rub on anything, and that all works fine. I'll drop it down and we'll have a look from the top, because the next part of it's obviously booster master cylinder. So we'll get it down and have a look. So all the builds I've ever done, I'll always put the booster into the brake shop. So this one, I'll put that into the brake shop and get it rebuilt. I've never pulled one apart and don't intend to. To me, I don't like to mess with the brakes. So that'll go in and get redone. And then this master cylinder was on the car and it looked quite new, and I think it probably went on before the car went to the auction. So I'm fortunate that I have that, but the option is to rebuild your original one or buy a new one. So that's where that's at. So these lines all run as per original, and then around one to the rear, the other front, and then there's a little one in the back here that comes down and around to the front. And what I'm going to do is I'll take one of these off in a minute and just show you how he's been able to make that line the same as original. So being a manual car, it'll have the master cylinder here for the clutch, and then we've got to make a clutch line. And then where that's taped, all these big holes, that's where the clips go. And along with the brake line, it also has the clutch line and also the speedy cable that gets all clipped onto those, that runs down to the underside of the car. So that's got most of it done. The last thing is the rear brakes. You've seen I had some rusty old ones on there. This is the brakes off the car, so these are being all cleaned up and painted with some VHT heat-proof paint in a cast iron appearance. And then I've been fortunate enough, and I've had some of this stuff for a long time now, to get a rebuild kit. We've got new pistons, and then I sent all of the original parts away and had them re-zinc plated. So when it goes back together, they'll look pretty much new, or better than new. And I've got all new seals and all to go on the piston. So that's a job for Howard to do. I don't know where you would particularly buy these. We had a very good brake shop here at Dapto that unfortunately is closed now, and he sourced those for me, but I'm sure they're still out there and available, the same as the piston. So I'll put those together. I probably won't necessarily do a video on that because I'm not a brake specialist, and I wouldn't like to be doing a video about how to do brakes, advising people what to do when it's not my profession, if you like. So they'll go together, go on, and then somewhere down the track, another 6 or 12 months time, we'll be putting it all together and bleeding them and hopefully have some decent brakes. But I'm very confident with what I'm doing because my original van had these rear brakes and had the single spot fronts, and I thought it was quite efficient. So now I've got better fronts, and I'm sure this will be more than enough brake for what I want to do with the car. I mentioned about the brackets that hold this stuff on. So got a little collection here that I've stuck away. Some would have come off this car, some off for others, and then that's like a reproduction one. So they're quite interesting the way they go together. So what you've got is you've got your base plate, so that plate, and then there's a rubber, like that one, with a little slot in it, and then the way it's held in is that little clip there, we can capture that, that fits inside of that. I had a better one somewhere. So I'll put it down on the table. So what happens is when you go to put it on, the rubber fits onto there, and obviously the brackets between, and then when you grab a hold of that with the pliers and clamp it a little bit inside, don't know if this will work here, but we'll try. When we pull that together, it does that. So that is inside the rubber. So if you can imagine you got a nice new one like that, a repo one, you put that over your two brake lines and you pull that together, it expands in behind and pushes that rubber into that big hole. That's what holds them on. You can reuse them, but not too many times. So if I go like that, but because it's like a spring steel, the more times you do it, it'll eventually crack through the middle. So there's a couple of versions of that because, as I said earlier, I can't see one here. There should be one that's got two sizes like that. So that's brake line, and that'll be either speedy cable or it might be the clutch line if it's a bigger line. So I'm not sure if they're available repo, but that's the one. I'll just grab the speedy cable and show you how that fits on. So just grab this is the original cable. Once again, I'm going to clean this up and reuse it. So that's your clip there. So that'll fit on there, and then it's flush on the back. So where it runs down the firewall to go to the gearbox, you'll have a brake line in here and your speedy cable there. So that's all those things. So this one, once again, it's in good nick. It's turning really nicely. So I'm going to clean that up, and that can go back on the car as well. Righto, so I've taken that rear one off. So this is the one that comes down the firewall and goes to the back of the car, and you can see what he's done there. He's pretty much reproduced the original, and that enables me to make it look right in the engine bay, utilise all the original clips, but in nice new stainless steel, so they won't deteriorate, and we'll have nice cream brake fluid. So it's amazing, these old lines just sitting here, they always seem to dribble out this really horrible brown brake fluid that's been there for years. So that's pretty much most of the brake side of it done. Phil will come back and do a little bit more for fuel and stuff for me, but pretty much ties the brake lines up. I'll leave all that on there now because my plan is to put the motor and gearbox in and start putting everything together to work out where that clutch line's going to go, because I've got to dodge the extractors, and I'm going to get everything assembled so that when it comes apart, all the different bits and pieces can either go off to be plated, or if I'm going to paint them and then put away, so when the whole car's painted, we can reassemble it. So that's how I like to do it. So thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you when we're doing some bit more on the van in the future.